Boston.
Hi, I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. As I said, I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. And I haven't had a drink today. But it's early. So pay attention. You know, the beauty of watching the sobriety countdown, I summed up in a couple of words to the first person that came up. It's not a good start, huh? They get their own, they give a big book and one day chip, whatever. When I said, every day is precious. Don't let it slip away. I'm a drunk. Nothing fancy. For me, it's very simple. When I showed up in a coffee shop, not too far from here, actually, in Mission Hill, across from Mission Church, there were 4 old guys there. They were in their 40s. I was 23. And I can imagine that I was just what they were looking for when they asked for help that morning. I was 23. I was totally out of my mind. I had been on, I don't know how long a drunk, whatever I was coming off. And I had long hair pulled back in a ponytail years before it was fashionable. I had a big scruffy beard that probably still had puke in it from the night before. I had cut off fatigue pants, a cut off fatigue shirt, sandals with no straps, a rope for a belt, a bandana around my head, a peace symbol or a cowbell or something around my neck. And I can imagine when they looked up and saw me, they said, "Oh, thank you, mighty higher power, for this gift." But what they saw was, they saw an alcoholic. They didn't see a snot-nosed young punk. They saw an alcoholic reaching out for help. And they treated me as such. They put their hand out, they sat me down, they asked me a couple of questions. They asked me if I was having trouble with alcohol. And I hemmed and hawed and said I wasn't sure. And when they stopped laughing, they informed me that I was the only one on Mission Hill that wasn't sure. So I finally said, okay, so maybe I got a problem. And they asked question number 2. They asked me if I was willing to do something about this problem I wasn't all that sure I had. And I said, yeah. And as all good fishermen do, they set the hook. They asked me question number 3. They said, are you willing to do it now? And I said, yes. And by now, they meant right now. They didn't mean in a couple of weeks when I stopped shaking and I got the puke out of my beard and I trimmed my hair and got some clothes on that wouldn't flog me to death if the wind got over 12 miles an hour. They meant right now. And they said those 4 magic words. They said, get in the car, kid. Now, here's a hint. There's a little clue here. If you're like 23 or 18 or 15 or 14, and the only people talking to you are some old people, and they say, get in the car, and you're not asking any questions like, where are we going? Why are you taking me there? What are we going to do when we get there? Are you going to bring me back? I mean, the questions normal people ask. Do I have to sit on the hump? Am I going to get a window? I didn't ask any of those questions. I just got in the car. They took me to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. They sat me down front. Okay, now put on your politically correct sensitizers because this is where it gets ugly. They said, kid, sit down, keep your mouth shut and listen. And they held up these 2 fingers. And they said, and find out if it's the booze, kid, that's causing any or all of the heartache and pain and misery and suffering and self-loathing and shit that's going on in your life. Come along with us. Listen. They held up those fingers and said, it's the booze, kid. You need to find out for yourself if that's what's causing all of that horror in your life. And they suggested the way to do that was to come along with them. after that meeting, all the meetings around here were 8:30 to 10 back then. My sobriety date's August the 1st, April Fool's Day. Very appropriate. In 1969. You know, and I listened to these guys. I sat down. They went and got me half a cup of coffee so everybody in the first couple of rows could feel safe because I was still farting like a rat. You know, I mean, I was shaking like a rat farting ice cubes. You know, it was like, what do you do? They give me half a cup, but I'm trying, I didn't like people. I didn't want to be with you people. You know, thank God nobody tried to hug me. Shit, I didn't even want to see you people. I didn't want to be with you. I didn't want to hold hands. I didn't want to sing songs. I just leave me alone. I'm not sure why I'm here. You know, all I knew was that my brother-in-law got sober and the kids had sneakers. But I wound up in that car and I wound up at that meeting. And after the meeting got over at 10, and some idiot that opened the meeting said, and stay for coffee and conversation after the meeting. And they actually, at that time in history, they actually had coffee and conversation after the meeting. Nobody left. So around 11, we finally got out of the meeting. And they weren't talking about the Red Sox or baseball teams or softball leagues and stuff like that. They were talking about sobriety and the steps and helping alcoholics to get sober. So we finally got out there at 11. They brought me back to Mission Hill, and they held me hostage. They wouldn't let me out of the car. And this happened like night after night after night for weeks. And I'm figuring these guys must have the worst home life in America. They must hate their families because they never want to go home. It took me a long time to figure out that they loved their families. They wanted to be home in bed, but they were buying me time. They were helping me to come to terms with staying away from a drink a day at a time. You know, my sponsor used to say it. He says, what we get here in Alcoholics Anonymous is a precious and unmerited gift of a day's sobriety, which unfortunately we have to work our ass off to get and keep and all that stuff. But I said, how can I be free? And he said, shut up. But he's another story. We'll get to him shortly. I met these guys in front of this coffee shop every night. You know, one of the guys in the group said he claimed he had 16 years sobriety. I knew he was lying, but I couldn't fathom why anybody would want to stay sober that long, let alone actually do it. And he drove the car. So we prayed that he wouldn't show up, partly because he was the most insane driver on the planet. He could get anywhere in Massachusetts in 20 minutes. He didn't believe in red lights and stop signs or any of that stuff. You know, but they met there every night. And sometimes the guy, we had one car in the group. Sometimes he didn't show up, and I figured, great, I get to go home and watch the Bruins game or something. And then they walked to meetings. They took the train or the bus to meetings. And they'd be on the buses. And if you notice the buses, they have these big windows in them, like everybody can see in. You know, and there's other people on the bus besides us. And they were talking. And they weren't talking about the Red Sox. They were talking about me and sobriety and what I would have to do to get sober. And I'm saying, well, you guys, hey, have you looked at the book? You know the cover? The second word? Anonymous? Did you miss that? And they said, listen, kid, everyone out there looking in the window of the bus is just dancing in the street that you're in here with us because they're going to get some sleep tonight. Because you won't be dancing on the hood of their car or peeing in a mailbox or, you know. I lost 3 fights with a mailbox on the corner of the street. I mean, I knocked it off the moorings, but it kicked my ass after that. And I got sober. They told me to come with them to meetings. They said, try this for 30 days and see if anything changes. And after 30 days, 60 days, things changed, you know. Like I wasn't waking up with puke on me. I was bathing regularly. I wasn't in the same clothes Friday that I put on Monday to go to work. I wasn't waking up in the hallway with wet pants because I just couldn't quite find that hole to put the key in. You know? I wasn't having to jump off the train outside of Northeastern University because that's where the train goes into the subway, and there were things in that subway. You know, I don't know if anyone else knew they were there, and I wasn't telling them, but I wasn't going in there. So I would jump off and I would walk to work. Now, mind you, I'm working in high-rise construction. I'm an iron worker. I'm working, 20 stories up in the air, and I'm terrified. I don't know what's going on. I come out of a blackout on a construction site one day with a guy tapping me on the shoulder saying, hey, what do you want for coffee? What the hell do you mean what do I want for coffee? I'm looking around, there's iron flying, crane booms moving, people yelling and screaming, and I'm trying to figure out, how the hell did I get here? The last thing I remember was Thursday. My boss used to come and ask me, where were you? And one day I just finally had enough lies. I told him the truth. I said, I have no idea. I said, the look on his face was priceless. I said, but if you run into anyone who can tell me, tell them to give me a call. After I got sober, like the 30, 60 bit early on, when they gave me a paycheck and they made a little presentation out of giving it to me because I had worked 40 hours 2 weeks in a row. They put a little star on the check and everything. It was like second grade or something. So other people do notice that you're doing something right. If you're relatively new and you wonder, does anybody notice? Shit, yes, they notice. They noticed they didn't have to step over you on the way into the building. They noticed, oh look, he's got dry pants. And and he didn't have fried rice last night. I hear people talk about, I was given the gift of desperation. I was given the gift of Chinese noodles. And pork fried rice at 482 miles an hour coming out of my nose not remember. That was me. I know you guys were sophisticated drinkers. You didn't eat the noodles and stuff by hand in the car. This is good. You kept your pinkies up and stuff. And I used to want to go kill the guy in the Chinese restaurant who cut the pork because I knew he cut it in like 3-inch chunks just for me because that stuff, wasn't coming through too good. But I got sober. My wife is here. She's 38 years sober. We grew up together. We knew each other as kids. And I got sober. And then she got sober, and she called, she was in the same group and just helping people get sober. And I used to take my nieces and nephews out to the park and stuff to play, and her daughter was best friends with my niece, one of my sister's daughter. So, well, when are we going to get Michelle, who's my daughter now? I said, okay, we'll get Michelle. So, and she was in the same group, and as things happen, I said, hey, she's pretty cute. I like her. But I remember what my sponsor said. See, when I got there, they said the first year, they said, don't get into any relationships because, first of all, who the hell would have you? In their right, who in their right mind would have you? They put it that way, because you're totally toasted, and so I did that for a year. As many, of course, it was probably easier then than now because I told someone last night, I guess, you know what I hate about these friggin' young people's things? It's that they didn't have them when I first came around. There weren't a lot of young people. There weren't a lot of women. There were even fewer young women. So it probably wasn't that difficult to go for a year. I don't know. But I did it anyway. Now that I look at it honestly. And then at the end of that year, I figured, great, I got my friggin' 1-year cake. They're going to turn me loose. And my sponsor, who I'll get a little more in depth with him in a second, but he looked at me and he said, now be a man and give them a year. And I wanted to take him out back and beat him with a stick. What do you mean give them a year? He said, show them the respect that they deserve and give them and help to provide them a safe place to come to get sober. Don't do anything to take that away from a newcomer. And I went, ooh. And I did that. And, I don't know how, when Angie and I started, kind of like dating. I mean, I wasn't real sophisticated. See, because alcohol, I started drinking at 11 or 12 years old. And, they talked, when I first got here, they talked, when there's an invisible line you cross over on the road to alcoholism. I was saying, yeah. Well, someone drew it behind me because I was screwed with the first drink. Actually, that was kind of like, I said, that's the theme of my whole, drinking story. I got screwed. I get guys, this old George in our group, I drank for 35 years. I'm sitting out there, and I got screwed. I got 10 or 11 years, maybe. I was gone. But I was sitting at meetings with my sponsor, and people were talking about, I lost my car, and I lost my house, and we lost a cabin in the woods and the chalet, and my dog ran away and all this other stuff. And I'm getting madder and madder listening to them, and I grabbed them one night and I said, listen, I'm having a lot of trouble. You're telling me to identify and not to compare. I said, and I can't do either. Because I never had any of that stuff. And he told me, he says, well, the booze had you by the throat so early and so young. You never got a chance to get any of that stuff. If I was pissed before, I was really pissed. I mean, I had nothing. I had like my social skills were really great, so when we started dating or going out or whatever, and I would trying to balance, well, she's sober, and I don't want to do anything to upset that apple cart because she deserves the right to get sober, but I'm a guy and I'm sober, and how, if you've been in that shit, you know what I'm talking about. So I would get ready to leave, and we would get to the door, and I would shake hands with her. And I'm serious. And I'd go down the stairs, and I'd get in my car and drive back to my apartment, and I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, like, you're an idiot. You're a freaking idiot. What the hell's wrong with you? But eventually, things changed, and we got married. I have to tell the story because she's here. So we get married. Everyone in the wedding party and on the altar was in the program, with the exception of my younger brother, who was about 3 years away from getting in the program. So, and they do all the abracadabra stuff, and the priest says, do you, John, take this woman to be, all that stuff. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, a day at a time. So everyone at the altar is cracking up, and her mother was a staunch Catholic, and she's all upset. What's going on up there? But I meant it. We've been together ever since. My son's sitting here. And the other, you talk about, I've been sober through the most joyous and unbelievably euphoric experiences in my life up to today. And one of those was when he was born. And the doctor took him, and actually when they popped him out, everyone in the delivery room started yelling out numbers like, 8, 9.5, 10, 4. And I go, what the hell is this? And then when they brought him back in, after I don't know what they did to him, they brought him back in, and the guy held him up and said, what was it, 10, 5.5. And I goes, what the hell is this? He goes, he weighs 10 pounds, 5.5 ounces. And I goes, no, one day she was a little upset. But the doctor handed him to me. And I walked out of that hospital after that, and I went to my car, and there was a ticket on it. And I said, thank you, higher power, you pain in the ass. But the amazing thing, the thought of a drink never entered my mind. I was just so happy. And I drove home, whatever I did, and I went back in the hospital, and life continued. And the flip side of that coin is, I've been sober through the most painful and sad moments in my life up to today. And my, our son died about 1.5 years ago. From her first marriage, and that was hard. And I'm not, I'm an alky at heart. I don't want to deal with stuff. And so I'm tough to live with when stuff like that happens, because I just want to ball up and hate everybody and everything. So I had to find a way to be there for my wife. When my older sister died, and I had to fly to Hawaii, a wonderful place to visit, I guess, if you're not going for that reason. And she was sober, and her husband's sober, and my nieces and nephews are there, and they did a procedure on her, and she was going to die because she had cancer. And people were getting ready to fly back to the States and go home. And she looked at everyone, and she said, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. And she pointed at me, and she said, you're coming home with me. And I said, okay. And I went home with her to her place on Maui for a couple of days because she said I was going. And someone told me afterwards, one of my nephews said, I don't know what it is about Uncle John. There's just something about that guy that when he's here, I feel that everything's going to be okay. That's not me. I get that here. I get that from you people. I get that from being sober. I find a strength and a courage, a backbone, a tenacity, and honesty, whatever you want to call it, here. That isn't mine. It is now. I can claim it now as mine. But I got it from you people. I got it from these meetings. I got it from this program. I got it from listening to people. I got it from sponsors. I got it because I had enough. When I got here, people say, "Oh, I want," people come with chips on their shoulder. Maybe that's where they got the idea for the chips. I don't know. They weren't giving out chips when I got here, which is probably a good thing, because if they tried to give me one and give me a hug, there probably would have been a fight. But I just, I didn't care what you did with the money. I didn't care who made the coffee. I hated coffee. I'm in a group, and this guy comes up to me and he goes, "Here, go dump the ashtrays." Because they smoked at meetings then. And they smoked. You wouldn't be able to see me at this point in the meeting. And I said, "But I don't smoke." He said, "I didn't ask you to smoke. Just go pick up clean up the ashtrays." So, I already don't like him. And then another guy handed me a broom, and I says, "What do you do with this?" He goes, "What are you, stupid?" He says, "You sweep." And I said, "Why do I have to do this?" He goes, "Just keep sweeping, kid, until you find out why you're doing it. You won't want to give up the broom." And I learned that lesson, because when it came time to give that broom to somebody else, I didn't want to let go of it, because I was saying, this could be my tenuous connection to a day's sobriety. Why should I give him my broom? It had become my broom, by the way. It wasn't the group's anymore. It was my freaking broom. And it worked. I've held all kinds of positions in the group, from, the secretary, treasurer, all that stuff. I've been involved in central service and general service and all of that. And I've learned a lot of things. I've learned to love being sober. I've seen, actually, there's a few people in this room that I've seen get sober, come in and get sober. That's one of the reasons I'm here, because I used to aggravate one of them, and he said, "I'm getting even with him." And he suggested they invite me somewhere. But, I see people come into meetings. And everyone said, I've been at meetings and people go, I said something and someone got upset and said, "Well, you shouldn't talk that way." And then, "Why not?" He said, "Well, you need to be gentle with the fragile alcoholic." And I'm going, "No, have things changed out there?" I've been sober a long time. I haven't been in a lot of gin mills lately. I said, "Have things really changed that much out there? Are the bartenders all taking assertiveness training? When you sucker punch the guy next to you, throw 3 bottles at him, and pee on the floor, does he say in a very nice voice, 'When you do that, it upsets me'? Because?" And then ask you to kindly remove yourself from the premises? Or do they still have 3 of the biggest guys there pick you up bodily and heave your ass out? It's one of those things that please. I didn't know I could play. Yeah, could you play the violin before you got sober? No, but I can do it now. But everybody wants to be, we have to be gentle. I said, why? Alcoholism's a nasty, vicious, ugly disease. They use words in the big book, and you don't even really need a dictionary to know that they're not good words. Like when it talks about the insidious nature. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it wasn't good. Insidious doesn't even sound like a good thing. No, I don't want any of that. It's like, Jesus, where did he come up with these words? Little phrases like alcohol. Now become the rapacious creditor. No, thanks. Jesus. Who wrote this stuff? But and they have shaky print. I call it shaky, the italics. I call it the shaky. And the one that gets me all the time is people say, "Well, why do you still go to meetings?" Let me see. And I always get this wrong, so you can correct it later in your book. It says, the alcoholic is, for reasons yet obscure, unable at certain times to recall to memory with sufficient force the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. He is without a defense against the first drink. It goes on in that book to explain, that's what the book is about. how to build a defense against the first drink. You know, the group I belong to, I've been called a lot of things over the years. I've been called a big book thumper and a big book Nazi and some other nasty words because I would like say, why don't you read that? You know, I mean, I wasn't hitting them with it and stuff. I was just suggesting maybe this would be good for you to read. And I wasn't headlocking them and, you know, just read that. Actually, I don't have one here, but you should read it. It's pissa. Really, it's a pissa. There's intrigue, mystery, adventure, sex. A lot of sex. Woo! Well, I'll tell you. So if you don't have a copy, I suggest it should be on the bestseller list. And I learned a lot of stuff. You know, I got a sponsor. Now, I'm not sure how I wound up with this sponsor. Okay? Like you say, he goes, well, did you ask him to be? I don't know. I might have. But see, the Mission Hill Group basically is like a lot of, you know, at that point in time, well, mostly Irish Catholic construction workers, ugly, you know, just big, burly, foul-mouthed people that drank and that ruined their lives and they got sober. And this guy joined that group. He was in a group when I joined it, actually. And he would describe himself, and it would piss everyone in the group off because he would say that he was a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant with scads of education. And he was right. He said, I probably have more education than the whole Mission Hill group put together. And again, he was probably right. And he wore a beret, jauntily cocked to one side, smoked cigarettes from a long cigarette holder, could wrap one leg around the other. I think he did it like 3 times. I think he was like a pretzel guy or something. And he became my sponsor. I don't know how. It just happened. You know, I mean, nowadays I realize it's much simpler. You put all your information in the computer, and the sponsors put theirs in, and you get the perfect sponsor. But I wound up with this guy anyway, and he became my spiritual mentor, and he saved my life. Him and a few other people in that group, because he would tell me, he would teach me things that I didn't know I was learning. You know, people would get up and they would say, open the big book to page 83 and read. And I'd get an elbow. Now, mind you, he was a little skinny guy, and I could have killed him. You know, I wanted to use him for a wishbone a few nights. And he would hit me with his elbow and say, is this book defective? So now I go, okay. I'm not getting any sleep tonight. Because I got to figure out what the hell he's talking about. Is this book defective? So like 2 nights later, it finally dawns on me, hey, the big book doesn't start on page 83. I figure, I'm pretty bright. So I see him next time, and I tell him, big book starts on page 1. And he says, no, it doesn't, dummy. And I go, So I have to figure out more. So I'll leave you to figure out that one yourself. It doesn't start on page 1. But he would do stuff like that to me. And he would force me to learn things. You know, and I came to love this man. You know, and he would sit at meetings. We were at a meeting one day, and people were just like, it was gagging stuff all over the place. You know. And Lynn sat there and in his inestimable Anglo-Saxon Protestant way with his cigarette holder, and he said, I find it very disconcerting that I sit at this meeting and I listen to people spewing emotional vomit all about the place in the benign hope that it's somehow beneficial to anyone in attendance. And I'm sitting there going, we're going to die. They're going to kill us. You know, we were at another big meeting, and it was trash your sponsor night, I guess. Everybody's sponsor was an idiot. You know, and Lynn got up and he said, let me try and upgrade your sponsor for you. He goes, if the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are 12 spiritual principles, and if your sponsor is someone who advises you on how to apply those spiritual principles to your life, that would make your sponsor your spiritual advisor. That should move him up the list a little bit, from idiot to idiot savant at least. You know, and he was brilliant. Now we have much ado about nothing, in my opinion, but now there's a whole new radical way to take the steps. You do it with your sponsor. No kidding. Who else would you do it with? The mailman? The guy who walks your dog? I went to a step meeting with my sponsor. And there was only like 2 step meetings in this whole area at the time. We would go to the step meeting. Then we would go and sit in his car over in Southie next to the beach, and we would talk about the step. Or we'd go back to his apartment or whatever, and we would talk about the step. And he had this wonderful way of greeting you. I'd come in and say, hey, how you doing, Lynn? And he goes, what step are you working on today? And I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him before he throws it. You know, but he taught me all kinds of wonderful things. You know, I've learned since I got sober how to become, I've become sober. I've learned how to become a friend. I've learned how to become a father. I've learned how to become a grandfather, a husband, to go to work and do my job and not expect everybody to dance around because I did it. You know, I've learned how to be comfortable with me. I can go out in a canoe or in my little fishing boat and stay out there for hours and be at peace with me. You know, I've grown tremendously, and I still have room to grow. You know, people want to make this a rapid fire course. Yes, we're going to rush you through this. I said, you know, people talk about, well, have you been through the process? I said, it doesn't appeal to me. I've seen processed cheese. Not an appealing subject to, compared to the real stuff. They want to make judgments on, well, maybe you're not a real alcoholic. I don't know. Were the tears in your kids' eyes real? Was the pain and suffering that you inflicted on anyone who got close to you real? Was the loneliness and the remorse and the guilt and the shame that you felt because you couldn't stay away from a drink? Because even when you wanted to, you couldn't stay away from a drink? Because the obsession and the craving and that insane crap just kept driving you? If you're here, stay here. As I said, every day is precious. None is more important than the other. My first day sober, whether you've been sober 1 day or 43 years, every one of those days is precious. Don't squander them. Don't let it slip away because something didn't go your way. 4 or 5 years ago, my daughter went to Iraq. She was over there. Someone was taking care of her 2 teenage children, my grandchildren, and something didn't work out right. And I got a call on the way home from work. I was working night, and she's in Iraq. And she's got other things on her mind besides worrying about what's going on with her kids. And she said, could you go and take care of the kids? And I said, when? And she said, now. And I said, done. And that day, I was in there with my grandchildren for the next 9 months. Now, I, to be honest, wasn't all that thrilled with the prospect of having to deal with teenagers again. So I told my grandchildren at the time, I said, listen, let's get something straight right off the bat. I didn't like being a teenager when I was one. I thought it stunk. But you add booze to it, it couldn't have been a real cheery experience when you start drinking at 11 at any rate. But, and I told them, I said, so I'm not too thrilled. I wasn't too thrilled about your mother when she was a teenager. And, so the prospect of dealing with you two isn't really brightening my day. But I told them, we'll get through this. We will get through this. And we did. And again, one of those euphoric moments in sobriety was when my daughter came back from Iraq, healthy and all that stuff. And as I was driving to the airport, my granddaughter was with me, and they tend to want to block off lanes and stuff in the tunnel, and I'm trying to run the barriers over and my granddaughter's hanging on. She said, Papa, count down. She said, Mom's home. And I looked at her and I said, no, that's my baby. And she's not home until I have her in my arms. And we made it to the airport, and that happened. She was home. And that was amazing. That I was able to do that. I love being sober. I love the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love the opportunity it's given me. There's all kinds of stuff. There's, and I'd like to say that, I had good upbringing and stuff. When I got out of the service, I came home to take care of my mother. My mother was dying of cancer. I got out of the service a little bit early. And when I came home from California, I had all the good ideals and intentions of a son to come home and take care of his mother. And the only mistake I made was I was an alcoholic and I didn't know it. And I brought me home with me. And whether I managed to do it for 2 weeks or 2 months, I'm not sure. But I got a job and I did what I was supposed to do. And then one night, coming through Brigham Circle, I decided, hey, what a wonderful guy I am. Look what I'm doing. And I decided that I needed a drink. Now, whether I got away with it, like I said, for one night or a week or 2 weeks, eventually I started drinking the way I drink. And whether my father's an alcoholic or not isn't my call. But drinking 101 when we were kids was watching Dad take the top off a fifth of whiskey and throw it out the window. Like, well, we won't be needing that, will we? So, I don't know, but... I forget where I was now. But that one night, I was barred from all the upholstered sewers in Brigham Circle, and I was drinking at home, and I ran out of booze, and I decided I needed another drink. Or as Dickie Mack used to say, I needed another drink like a turtle needed power brakes. But I got up to leave the house, and my father said something like, to me about, I was too drunk to leave the house, and I'm not sure what happened. I was in a blackout or a rail, whatever. I remember little bits and flashes and pieces. I know door panel got punched out, and my sister went flying through the air, and the bed got broken, and my younger brother was in the other end of the hall crying. And I looked up, and my mother, who was dying of cancer, had propped herself out of bed, and she was leaning against the door jamb, and she was screaming, "Let him go, he's crazy." And they let me go. And she was right. I was crazy from the disease of alcoholism, and I didn't have a clue what was wrong with me. And I left there, and I wandered around the Heat Street Project in the back of Mission Hill, and just hoping that somebody would jump out from behind a rock or something and beat me to death because I was too much of a coward to kill myself. My mother died shortly after that. The wake and the funeral are a tribute to the devastation that this disease can wreak on a family. It had to be the most disgusting display of a family having its heart and soul ripped out by this friggin' disease. There was a jug in the ladies' room, a jug in the men's room. There was a bar across the street. And if you know Catholic wakes, eventually the priest shows up, and eventually he's going to say the rosary. He got ready to say the rosary, and it looked like a stampede with people getting out of there. Me, a couple of my siblings, my father, my brother-in-law, heading across the street to McCarty's Tavern. We couldn't stay long enough to say the rosary at my mother's funeral. The freaking booze. Ripped the heart and soul out of that family. After my mother died, all bets were off. But, I got sober. And I learned to live an entirely different life. And I was like one of the dominoes. In the last couple of months, I had a great week. It was great. I got to, Warren, one of the guys in our group, got his 40th. That Tuesday, I got to give my sister-in-law, who I helped get into the program, her 40th. And that Saturday, I got to give my younger sister her 40th. All because one person got sober, because someone carried the message to me. And from that ugly, nasty, vicious, vile person I was, I have to, it's Boston and it's baseball, so I have to tell you a baseball story. My son was playing baseball and a little league, and I was working with the Challenger League that they started with handicapped kids. And we're out in the field, and you're helping them do whatever they got to do. And this little girl got up, and we had the tea, and she's got the bat and the ball, and she's standing there, and she's all ready to hit that ball. And I'm saying, okay, hit the ball. And she mumbles something. And I said, what? And she mumbled it again, and I couldn't quite get it. And I looked over, and her mother was standing by the fence, and her mother said, you have to sing the song. So I said, what song? And the little girl said, the baseball song. So I looked at the mother again, and the mother said, take me out to the ball game. Now, here's 180 pounds of hard-ass, rock-solid, muscle, vicious, nasty, iron worker, crazy, Mission Hill, insane person standing in the middle of a field singing, take me out to the ball game, so that little girl would hit the ball. I owe that to you people. I owe that to you people. The ones that were here before me and the ones that have come after me. I sat here last night before the meeting watching people come in and dancing and jumping up on chairs and screaming and yelling and having a great time. And I said, that's the joy of living. The joy of being released from the hell of alcoholism. And the fact that we can come together in a place and feel safe. Because I have a very visual mind, if you haven't figured that out from listening to me. But I see this picture when I walk through the doors of a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I picture the old higher power up there going, safe! You're in! Because I feel, I had a guy in our group said, I walked into a meeting one day and he was sitting there and I sat down and he goes, he said, you really love this, don't you? I said, yeah, I do. He goes, it becomes very obvious. He says, when you walk into a meeting, your whole being lights up. Because I don't know about God. God and I parted ways a long time ago. So, I don't get into arguments about God anymore because of all it's all a whole bunch of crap. My crap, not yours and not God's, but my crap. So I deal with a higher power. And I know that there's something that exists at meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a tangible something that's present here that isn't present anywhere else that I go. Big rooms, small rooms, and you can call it the grace of God, you can call it the collective consciousness, whatever the hell you want to call it, but it works. I come into rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, no matter what's going on with me, and I sit down, and it's almost like, if you ever blow, actually there were some of those little balloons flying around. If you ever just grab the end of that, we'll call them balloons to be safe. Better to have them than not, actually, You never know when a balloon fight's going to break out. What were you thinking? I'm not really that old, so trust me. But I can almost when you squeeze the end of a balloon and let the air out, that weird noise it makes. I can almost sense that when I'm sitting at a meeting, because before the meeting even starts, I feel better. It's amazing. So don't be too hard on yourself. You're not here to beat yourself up. There's other people willing to do that. Trust me, somebody out there has video you don't want to see. Don't go asking questions. I have a shirt that I wear to all family functions. It says, I got mugged on memory lane. So be careful. And give yourself a break. I love being sober. And I have to tell this story for Stevie. And I think I tell it just because it aggravates people. But me? Aggravate people? It's about this little bird, and he was smarter than all the other birds. He was probably an alkie. And fall came, and all the other birds were packing their bags and stuff, and time to go south because we know what happens. We have that little drive. We got to go. But this little bird was so smart. He said, "Yeah, I'm not going. It's nice. It's still warm out. Plenty of berries on the bushes." So he stayed. Things were great for a week or so. Plenty of berries, the whole place to himself. And one morning he goes down to the pond to get a little drink of water, and ice. So he figures, oh, maybe I better go. So he takes off and starts snowing out, and he's flying, and the snow's building up on his little wings, and he just gets so tired, he just can't take it anymore. And he comes to rest in a barnyard. And he's cold and shivering, and he figures, this is it. I'm going to die here alone, and no one's going to know. And as he's thinking this, a big cow walked by and plop, dropped a big load on him. And the poor little bird thinking, this is the final indignity. But then wait a minute, he goes, but it was warm, and it melted the snow, and there was some little corn kernels and stuff, so we had dinner. And he was so happy that he was saved that he started to sing, and the barn cat heard him. And the barn cat came over and cleaned him off and ate him. And there's 3 lessons you can learn from this. And the first one is that everyone who drops a load on you isn't your enemy. And the second one is that everyone who cleans it off isn't your friend. And the third and most important is if you're warm and happy in a pile of manure, keep your mouth shut.